As we move now to compensation plans, there are really five main types of compensation plans. The first is piece rate pay, and that is earning some fixed amount for each unit produced. This is more common when it comes to um, manufacturing or sales of certain things of fixed value, fixed amounts. Now, commission, the next one, is getting some percentage of what gets sold. So the difference between piece rate pay and commission is so piece rate is more on the production side, commission is more on the sales side. And on top of that, sales also pays a percentage instead of a fixed amount. With gain sharing plans, the earnings of the individuals are tied to the group production. And so it's more of a team-based pay to where how the team does determines how the individuals are paid. Now, that's similar to profit sharing and bonus plans. Now, with these plans, especially the profit sharing, it rewards groups instead of individuals. So the gain sharing is more of the base pay, but the profit sharing is more of, okay, if we do well, the better you do, the more you're going to get paid, kind of way of looking at it. And finally, you have time-based pay, which is the most common type of pay. That's getting paid by the hour or paying a salary, getting paid by the year, getting paid for some unit of time. Now, obviously, people would tend to prefer time-based pay instead of pay for productivity because they like to avoid risk. Now, both options, however, are available. So you have the four, which are based off of production, and then you have the time-based pay. And both are, like I said, both are very competitive. Now, in general, however, people who get paid for output may end up earning more. So you might think, well, why is that? You would think that production, there might be a motivation issue, so people might not make as much. Well, there's a few reasons. One is incentive. By working harder, you get paid more. And that incentive pay tends to motivate employees more. And so they work harder. And because they work harder, they're going to make more. These types of jobs also tend to attract more motivated workers. So if you know you're going to have to work hard to get paid well, all right, you're going to want to go to this type of job. Whereas if you're not going to want to work very hard, you're going to stay away from them. So what happens is that it tends to attract the more motivated people who tend to earn more on average. It also forces a compensating wage differential. So because with these output pay setups, there isn't a guaranteed amount. And so if that was the case, if there's no guaranteed amount and you still expect to make the same, if on average people make the same there as in the time-based pay jobs, then no one would go there. They would go with the safe option for the same pay. Right? What happens is because of this, because of that lack of stability, that unknown factor, they tend to pay a little bit more on average within these. So what do the firms tend to prefer? They prefer really ones where the pay incentivizes the worker to work better. So the piece rate payments, it passes the consequence of poor output directly to the employees. So the employers don't need to spend as much time screening and supervising because the system will work itself out. Employers are not fans of salaries, however. It's risky because they bear the risk of the poor performance. If there's poor performance, okay, they still have to pay the worker the same or fire them. And if they fire the worker, they need to pay the cost to get that worker replaced. Pay for output gives individual incentives. It also induces people to work harder. But there are disadvantages. It takes people away from focusing on the non-measured aspects. And so, for example, salesman. Okay, so a car salesman. what gets measured with their pay most of the time is they get paid based on commission. And so their focus is selling. Well, if their focus is on selling, it may not necessarily be on customer service. And so they may try to be, selling you this, and this, and then it turns out you didn't actually need it, and you figure that out later. And so now you say, I'm not going to go back there. I'm going to stay away from that company. And so the problem with the output pay is that it can cause other aspects that aren't measurable to suffer. They also, now the group incentives are difficult to measure individuals, but you can with groups. And so to offer incentives for the groups to work hard is good for the employer. They view it as positive. The problem is that there's the free rider issue, to where one person doesn't really work hard but still gets the benefits. And if everybody knows that they are going to, and this goes more towards game theory, but if everybody knows that they're going to get paid based on how the group does, there's less incentive for everyone to work as hard. Now, when we look at group incentives for executive pay, that tends to be more common. So it's more common where executive pay is based off of some sort of profit sharing or group pay bonuses. But the problem here is that executives are given to incentive to focus on the short-term strategy instead of long-term, because they want to do good now. Long-term, though, in order for a company to succeed, however, they need to think more long-term and not short. All right, so there's an issue there. Pay for time in general is not preferred by employers, but if there's merit increases, it can kind of help with the best of both worlds. So basically, if you have some sort of a pay for time where if the worker does good, they'll get promoted to this level. If the worker does good, they will get a bonus or this or that. So the way to incentivize employees is by giving them, based on them up front, okay, you do this, you do it good, you get this. You're going to pay X dollars an hour, but if you work really hard, we'll give you a bonus or we'll give you a raise. And so that can be kind of the way to kind of bridge that gap. Now, in general, higher pay tends to lead to higher productivity. And there's a couple reasons why. One is the idea of you get what you pay for. And so if you pay more, you will get higher quality, better, more motivated, higher ability workers. It also helps to build more commitment. So workers tend to be likely or less likely to quit jobs that are higher paying. And so when that happens, the employers are willing to train them more, and the employees will be better workers. And if they're there longer, their in-house knowledge is going to grow, and their overall productivity is going to be high. There's also better perceptions. Workers want to work at a level they are paid at. And so if you think you're underpaid, on average, people tend to not work as hard. If you feel like you're overpaid, however, people tend to want to work up to that level. And so this kind of brings up, is it the issue of did the chicken or the egg come first? But are people that are better workers go there, or do they get there and become better workers because they're there? But in general, it's the case where higher pay tends to lead to higher productivity. Now, the internal labor market, it tends to be better for all. So the internal labor market is hiring from within, promoting from within. And so if you need a manager, instead of going out into the labor market and finding one, you look at the workers you have at the lower level and promote one. Now, it tends to be better for everyone. And what tends to be a more common practice nowadays is the idea of underpaying early and overpaying late. So basically, you pay a worker an amount lower than their productivity early, and then paying them an amount higher than it later. Now, there's a couple reasons for this, why it's good. The first is sorting and signaling. So it's a way for employers to identify a worker who will be around for the long run. And so if a worker is going to be around for the long run, if they can see that pay, they're going to hang around. Now, on the contrary, if you just pay one flat rate across a worker's entire career, chances are they're not going to stay there. But if they can see that they are going to, if they want to be there and they think they're going to be good there, they're going to stick around for that higher pay. Now, on top of that, they're willing to accept that lower amount because they expect to make it that long. So, for example, with the government, a lot of jobs start out paying very low, but it's usually set up to where within 4 or 5 years, your pay goes up maybe 40, 50, 60, 80%, something like that. And so by workers willing to accept that, it's showing them that they're planning on being around for the long run. There's also incentives. So employers have more incentives to work, employees have more incentive to work hard to ensure they collect those benefits. So they know they're being underpaid at the beginning, but they want to work hard so that way they can make it to those years where they get overpaid. There's also constraint. There's a normal way to do this is to use compensation and the marginal revenue product of labor. Now, in order for this to work, it must be competitive market and the profit conditions must be met. And so what does that mean? And so if we look here at the compensation level over time and a worker's marginal revenue product, you can see that early on, the worker is being underpaid. So in this area here, the worker is making less than they're worth. After this point here, after this T star, this certain time without the firm, they're going to be making more than they're worth. And so it's with the, if the employees come in, right, they want to get up to this point here. And so the firms, they want to make it so, look, you stick around, you can get up here. And so it can help them to really build commitment. Now, when it comes to pay by firm size, in general, larger firms tend to pay more. They get better workers and more opportunities. There are compensating wage differentials. There are some disadvantages of working within large firms. You don't get recognized as much. May not be as glamorous. There tends to be a little less enjoyment in there. But because of that, they tend to pay more. Now, with the large firms, because they have so many positions to fill, if they had a lot of turnover, they would have to pay a lot to replace those workers. And so it becomes more expensive in that case. So they want to keep their workers. So they want to pay them appropriately for that. And finally, when you have more workers, you can specialize more. And as you've known from your other economics courses or lectures, the more specialized you are as a firm, as a country, the more you're able to produce. You can do it better and more efficiently. And so larger firms, because they have more workers, they have more tasks, they can do that. And so their production can be high, their average production per worker can be higher. And so they can win from that. And so they can pay more because they're producing at a lower cost. And so this is just an overview of just kind of the basic compensation plans and looking at what employers want, what employees want, and also a breakdown of pay by firm size.